And I think we are good to go.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deidre Gifford, your outgoing chair of the P20 WIN board. Commissioner at Office of Health Strategy, thanks for being with us this afternoon. Looks like we have good attendance. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 2 minutes past 2. And ask if there are any members of the public who would like to make a comment this afternoon. If so, could you raise your virtual hand, and Katie and I will do our best to identify. Okay, I do not see any members of the public who wish to comment. Katie, do you see anybody?
I do not.
Okay, great. So I will now ask Katie to call the roll, please.
Okay, so Commissioner Bartolomeo.
Here.
Acting Commissioner Trueworthy, proxy for Commissioner Bai.
Here.
DC Canada is unavailable. Sarah Fox, CCEH. Scott Gall, OPM.
Here.
DA Garcia, DOC.
Present.
Jan Keeney, proxy for Ainsley Diamonds, CSU.
Here.
Commissioner Larson, OHE.
Here.
Chris McClure, UMass.
Here.
Brian Sperry, proxy for Gary Roberge.
Here.
CSSD. Okay, thank you. Kelly Valeries, OWS.
Here.
Commissioner Russell Tucker, SDE.
Present.
ED Solek, from CTEX.
Here.
Jen Witness, CCIC.
Here.
DC Williams, DCF.
Here.
And Rika Wren, UConn.
Here.
We have quorum, 15 present.
Great. Thank you very much. So the next item on our agenda is the nomination and selection of a new P20 WIN Executive Board Chair. As you may recall, the term of the chairperson of this group is 2 years by our bylaws. And the first chair was, I believe, Commissioner Bai, who was selected in 2020 and served a 2-year term. And that transitioned to me in June of 2022. And this will be my last meeting as chair. I would like to say thank you publicly to Katie and Scott, who are really expert facilitators of this work and do a very good job of not only managing our agendas and the subcommittees of this board, but also prepping us in advance of the meeting, and have really made it a pleasure for me to serve in this capacity. So thank you very much to both Katie and Scott for all of your hard work on P20 WIN. The operating group of the program has decided to recommend that Kelly Marie Valeries. Yeah, I never know if I say your last name right, Kelly Marie. Is that right?
That
Valeries?
is correct.
Okay, Kelly Marie, our Chief Workforce Officer, be the next P20 WIN Executive Board Chairperson. So I'd like to entertain nominations for chairperson, and then we'll have any discussion. Commissioner Larson.
Thank you, Commissioner Gifford, and thank you for your direction and your guidance. It's been a pleasure to work with you on this committee, and certainly we hope you're going to stay on, because we think that this is a delightful group and we want to have everyone still remain actively involved. With that, I'm proud to move the appointment of Kelly Marie Valeries to chairperson of the P20 Executive Board.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Sorry, Ellen. Looks like
No,
Commissioner
that's
Russell
okay.
Tucker
Second.
beat you to that. You can be the second. So moved by Tim Larson and seconded by Charlene Russell Tucker. Is there any discussion?
I briefly thank also Dr. Gifford for serving in the role and agreeing to do this through a couple of transitions, and Kelly for agreeing to at least accept the nomination. We'll go through the vote in a second. It's been a pleasure working with Dr. Gifford. All of the work has been done by Katie. I just have showed up for the meetings, but the credit is due to her. But also you for providing just really nice leadership through this process and bringing you into something I think that was new, and your patience and willingness to work on it. And we're very excited that Kelly's agreed to take this on as well. It's critical that we're able to provide data for the kinds of things that the Office of Workforce Strategy is tasked with, and just very excited for her bringing her perspective to this, and the more engagement we can get from the board, the better we are off.
Thank you, Scott. Any other discussion before I call a vote? Okay, seeing none, then we can do this by a voice vote. You're welcome, Elena. We can do this by a voice vote unless there's any objection from a member of the committee. So I will ask it all in favor of electing Kelly Marie Valeries as the new chair of this board. Please indicate by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Please indicate by saying nay. And are there any abstentions? Great. So that would be 15 votes in favor and none opposed. Congratulations, Kelly Marie. Over to you. For
Thank
your
you.
inaugural speech as
Yeah,
chair.
I'm not sure whether I need a speech, but I just want to thank all of you for the nomination and for the confirmation vote. Thank you very much, Deirdre, for all of your leadership and the mentorship that I'm hoping that I will have for maybe a month or more as I onboard here. And thank you to Katie and Scott for your confidence in asking me to fill this role. I'm very much looking forward to working with all of you, and I firmly believe that, the state is a better place and a better run machine with the P20 Win board and the work that comes out of P20 Win, and that data and accountability are just so foundational to the work that all of us do across the different agencies. So I really appreciate the confidence that you have in me to help move that forward in the next 2-year term, in the 2-year term that I have coming up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Kelly will assume her official duties went with the December meeting, and then we'll be working with Katie and Scott on a transition between now and then. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is updates. We have updates on several projects that are underway. As you know, we've done a lot of work in 2024 studying the states of various data systems in the state, and the operating group has been tracking recommendations. So Scott's going to go through some of the recommendations a little bit out of order date-wise, but sort of in order logically speaking. And each of these will have some actions that are required for the December board meeting. So the team wanted you to have a little bit of an introduction at this meeting, ask any questions that you have so that you're prepared to vote on any actions in December. So I think Scott and Rachel have updates on 4 different things, and Scott's going to start with the 119K Commission Young People First Plan. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you. So we'll go over this kind of quickly, but I think as Dr. Gifford was saying, there's no immediate action required, but we are going to, there's obligations for the executive board for P20 Win that are coming due at the end of the year. So we want to make sure that we're making sure everyone's aware of the requirements here, where the work currently stands, and then we can identify anything that the board wants us to move forward in the next couple of months before the December meeting. So I think most people on the board would have seen there's the 119K commission, which is 119K is for the 119,000 disconnected youth in Connecticut. They issued a plan called Young People First about a couple of weeks ago that was featured at the legislature, featured prominently in media, and I know many of the agencies here today were engaged in some aspect of the planning or the follow-up after the release of the plan. The first recommendation in the plan, of which there's several recommendations in the plan. The first one is focused on data and accountability and measuring, in particular, the disconnected youth population, looking at changes in that population over time. And so, again, we wanted to make sure everybody is familiar with what's in the plan. It does prominently feature P20 Win. It talks about the nature of what we've been able to do to date to produce data on disconnected youth for the first analysis that was done that led to the creation of the commission and some of the other work that's related. But it asks a lot of us in the future to continue that work, to do that on an ongoing basis, to produce reports on a yearly basis. Rachel will talk about sort of where we stand for the current one in a minute. And it asks us to do some things to expand and build on the infrastructure that's here so that data on disconnected youth in particular could be more accessible in the long term. So I'll just say a couple of quick things, but this is really where we wanted to make sure we're giving an update to the board before December so you know where things stand and if there's things you want to make sure that we're focusing on or attending to. We can do that. The two things to identify here in the legislation that passed last year, that's Public Act 24-45, that has some sections related to disconnected youth, is referenced in the plan, and it has two obligations for the P20 Win Executive Board. So the first is what we'll talk about in a minute, is annual reports on disconnected youth for the state. And the second obligation for the Executive Board is to develop a plan for a statewide data intermediary to share data from nonprofits that serve disconnected youth. And so we're to make sure the board first off is aware, again, of the 119K Commission plan, the focus on P20 Win in it, and the two requirements that are going to come back, later in the year for the Executive Board. So we're working on the report and the update, and we'll give a review of that in a second. We're also working to bring on a contractor to help develop a plan for statewide data intermediary, and we are close, hopefully, to being able to sign the contract to bring somebody on to do that, but we were able to allocate a little bit of resources to have somebody do that. That helps in a couple of ways. It gives us an external perspective. We're not sort of just coming up with the answers ourselves. We're getting somebody that's got some independence, objectivity about the ability to build a statewide data intermediary that connects data from nonprofits. We've got someone with expertise in the area, national perspective, so they can see what's been done in other states, what has or hasn't worked well. And so hopefully we can bring on the contractor to develop the plan relatively soon, and we'll have the plan done as close as we can to the statutory deadline, which is January 1st. And so in December, what we'll try and do is give you a report out on what they've learned so far from that planning process. You will likely be asked to either have a conversation or reach out to nonprofits that you work with. The focus for the planning effort is really on connecting data from nonprofits. And so if you're a representative from an agency that works with or provides funds to nonprofits that work with disconnected youth, we'll probably reach out to you to understand more about the nature of those nonprofits, their relationships, their ability to connect or share data. And so that will come soon, hopefully, but once the contractor's on board, they'll probably reach out to some of the members of the board about learning about nonprofits that serve disconnected youth. And then when we meet in December, we'll have a progress report for you on where that work stands, and then hopefully a plan to come soon thereafter. And again, the plan, the use of P20 Win, the expansion of it, those are prominently featured in the 119K Commission report, which I think overall is good news. I would characterize the work that is described in that recommendation as largely underway. We're doing many or all of the things that are there to varying degrees. There's always room for improvement. We can always do things, better in some fashion, but we're doing a lot of what's already there. we're doing a lot of what's there already. But we want to make sure you know kind of what's coming for the December meeting. I saw a hand go up, but that's the quick update.
Jen
Yeah,
Witness, you have your
yeah.
hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I would just comment, I have 2 comments on the report and the level of attention that it's getting, and then also the level of resources that we are, as P20 Win, are being asked to commit. I have concerns about the report and sort of the agenda of the report, in that, like, as a higher ed, I represent higher ed institutions, and there's nothing in there that talks about access to higher ed as being important for disconnected youth. And I think it's just a little confusing to me as why there wouldn't be anything on that. And also just the focus of a lot of the data is on non-state level data. And so, that's not necessarily P20 Win's focus on some of this, and so I'm just concerned that, this is going to get more attention next session. And I wonder, Scott, Katie, and Rachel, like, what is P20 Win doing to maybe educate legislators about P20 Win proactively? Because I just worry, like, if we're being reactive to legislative proposals, then we're not really getting to show all the good work that you're doing. And again, like, there's states that are referenced in the report where I know we're ahead of them in terms of the level of agencies that are participating. And they come to us in Rhode Island to say, how are you doing this? Right. And so how is P20 Win sort of positioning itself to be a little less reactive and have more legislators understand all the good work that you're doing?
Maybe this is a good time to provide an update on both the disconnected youth report and the marketing and communications, because I think the second actually comes first. So, and there's always a tension, I think, between providing a lot of communication, but then also inviting scrutiny. So one of the things that we know is that people don't really understand both what P20 Win stands for, the history, where we've come from, and what's possible to do. And these reports have provided a lot of really great attention on the arrangement, but also there's a lot of misunderstanding, like you said, Jen, about what the possibilities and the limits are based on the current resources that we have. So for those who I haven't met, I'm Rachel Leventhal-Weiner. I lead research and evaluation on board members for the Office of Early Childhood. And hopefully there's no issues with my internet right now. What I'm doing is just providing 2 quick updates. The first is on our communication and marketing effort. So this has been described to the executive board multiple times, but now we're finally in a state of engagement with Cronin Communications, and they're going to help us with the problem or the challenge that we face that Jen has highlighted around who's aware of P20 Win. Is there an opportunity to sort of broaden the awareness and understanding of what's possible with data sharing? And is there a need for or an interest in potentially changing our name to broaden the scope and reflect the sort of broader participation of agencies represented at the table? That entire engagement has been approved and will likely kick off within 2 weeks. My hope is that we're actually going to begin that on November 4th, and we have engagement with them through February. So they'll be doing some internal stakeholder conversations. Many people here or your data governing board representatives will be contacted. And then they'll be doing a broader survey of users, so researchers, legislators, other other agency participants and data stewards, just to sort of understand broadly how we can improve the way we communicate about the partnership. So that's one update I have to offer. I'm happy to take questions. Hearing none, I'll just provide a quick update on the existing disconnected youth arrangement. And Jen, you highlighted one of the challenges that we faced when Public Act 24-45 was passed, that available resources to replicate such a report in the time that we had was quite going to be a challenge. We came up with an initial plan and then actually had to alter that plan because the Dalio Foundation decided that they would fund the Boston Consulting Group to partner with OPM to produce the report, still with the same amount of time. And we've been working really diligently since the very first week of August to both work with all the agencies that participated and new agencies to develop the data request and the data sharing agreement, which has been in circulation now and is nearly fully executed. We are still awaiting 1 or 2 signatures on that data sharing agreement. The Boston Consulting Group, our team has been working with them twice weekly for about 8 weeks now on developing the Shell report and Shell exhibits and really planning for, once we have the analytical findings, how we're going to communicate them. The tone of the report will be different because as the state issuing such a report, we are not going to be taking an editorial angle on what will be done with the findings, but our goal is to actually elevate the data that have been shared from all the agencies to create greater visibility into what's possible with data sharing and to create a really good and important tool for people to use thinking about these populations. So the deadline is January 1st. And working really diligently towards that. I know that we'll have findings to share at that point, and we're just still working through what the final product will really look like. So your data governing board members will be hearing about this as well. We gave them this update at our last data governing board. Commissioner Gifford, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Jen, thank you for your comments as well, because I think they're really salient. And I'm wondering, a few of us commissioners have also been discussing this report and approach to the I think it's fair to call it the marketing effort around the 119K commission and the findings. And I had sort of forgotten, to be frank, about the efforts that you were just describing, Rachel. In other words, that we are as a state under the legislation in the process of updating the original data. And so I wanted to just throw it out for discussion. Perhaps there's an opportunity tying the sort of marketing and branding and to the concerns that Jen brought up and that many of us have talked about perhaps some of the ongoing state efforts not being fully recognized in the 119K report. I'm wondering if the report that you're describing, the update, might be an opportunity to showcase the state's efforts in a lot of the areas that are addressed in the 119K. So maybe like an informational session at the LOB, for example, where we could say, here's what P20 WIN is doing, here's the work that's already underway around updating the data and doing all this work to disengage the youth, et cetera, so that we have an opportunity to showcase and highlight some of the things that might not have been as prominently discussed in the report.
Thank you for that suggestion. I actually think that's really an important one for us to plan for. And I think that's one of the considerations that we've had discussions internally. You know, we are issuing this report. It's a legislatively mandated report. It's not going to be splashy. It's not going to be 60, 70 pages with tons of graphic design. It's going to be a statement of insights and hopeful facts around the state of the work. And one thing that we were very careful about in this first iteration of us conducting this report is that we tried to model the methodology and process as closely to the process that was adopted initially, because no one stands to benefit from sort of presenting something that looks characteristically out of sync with what was most recently presented. So we do have some education that we have to do when we release that report. And I think you made a really great suggestion, Commissioner Gifford. We'll discuss that when we get to that point. Scott, Katie, do you have anything else you wanted to add to those updates before we continue, or if others wanted to contribute?
I mean, I just would add, Rachel, I think I just don't know how we sort of add some, Charlene's raising her hand. There's other issues that just aren't being acknowledged, and SDE has really great data on this. So like if you're going to present it, it could say like, you know, this is what the report says, but this is what our commissioners have also, and I would defer to Charlene on this. Go ahead, Charlene.
No, I was just jumping in to say yes and yes to what was said. And, you know, to be clear, there is work for all of us to do. I don't think there's anyone saying that there isn't. However, knowing what is really important as we think about where we're going. And I think that's what I'm hearing is what are those opportunities to just join forces across agencies, across this body. I know we've done some essential considerations around this. And we talked about P20 Win and the work that's happening here in this space as well. So it just gives us an opportunity so that the focus, we can look to see where the gaps are, where they're truly gaps, and that those become our focus areas for what we need to get done. So I am just voicing the need for us to be able to have this kind of a dialogue and making sure partners, all our partners know what's happening. So we know from where to build to get to where we want to go. And so again, just saying thank you to Commissioner Gifford and Jen for putting that in this space and for this body to be able to do that strategically moving forward.
And I just want to add too, I greatly appreciate the feedback and the suggestions around improvements for the future. And I think that that's a goal of ours in the coming year. I think that with the time that we had and the breadth and depth of what we're trying to execute on, it's almost impossible to do both. But we recognize that simply reporting out on something without actually talking about what the state's doing to tackle, reduce, address some of these disparities that we're observing in the data is not really a service to anyone who's working in the space. And so and there are shortcomings to the data that are included and excluded. And so we hear the feedback and we're super appreciative of the dialogue and the support. Scott, while you have your hand up.
One maybe last comment on this. So I think both comments from Jen, Dr. Gifford, Commissioner Mercer Tucker. So it's like we take seriously the report has 22 recommendations and one of them is about P20 Win. And so I think trying to find a way to make sure that we're coordinating with whatever other outreach is coming from state agencies, but that this is like one of the voices in the process, which hopefully has been the case so far. And we want to make sure that we're doing that in further outreach. But yeah, I think we feel the same thing. We just want to make sure the work is recognized and that people understand the importance of this system for feeding the data and to understand the whole issue and whether we're making progress on it in whatever fashion. That's it. Sorry.
Those are my updates.
Thank you, Rachel. We have one more on the Governor's Workforce Council strategic plan. Is that you, Scott?
That is me again, although I'm going to see if we can defer to our incoming chair for parts of this. I'll kind of again quickly, we want to make sure people know when P20 Win is referenced in these sort of big statewide initiatives. Overall, that is a success. That's good news. It does create some challenges because it raises the expectations, and so we just have to sort of balance the expectations of what we're doing. What's in the Governor's Workforce Council, and we have our Chief Workforce Officer with us who could describe it. But it goes through, again, several recommendations for improving workforce development activities in Connecticut. One of those recommendations is on data. And then P20 Win is featured prominently in the recommendation on data and accountability, which overall I think is great news. The description of it is describing a request that we're underway with the analysis for. And so it's describing, again, sort of work that we're already doing similar to the 119K Commission plan. So it's nothing that is off course with the activities that are sort of already underway. But we wanted to make sure, again, that if you're not directly engaged in the Workforce Council, some of the agencies are not, directly involved in it. If you haven't read every single page of the Workforce Council plan, or maybe you paid attention to other parts of it, we just want to make sure folks are aware that P20 Win is featured there, which again is good news, and that we can, sort of work to meet the goals that are laid out in the plan. And again, we're on course for those. So the work that's described there is work that I think in general we're already doing. So that's good news. But that will again come up soon, and so we want to make sure folks are aware that the strategic plan features P20 Win. They know some of the work that's described there. It covers the analysis that we're doing on sort of the workforce system as a whole. It's probably a useful thing to describe, so that we're not looking at it in slivers. We're looking at really the system as a whole. I believe I think Kelly had done sort of a presentation of this at a board meeting a little while ago. So we're looking at the way in which people move between different types of programs, whether they're workforce programs, post-secondary programs, adult education programs, the technical high schools. And so several of your agencies are brought into it and is trying to give sort of a holistic system-wide view, which is critical because it's a complicated sector. And so that's what's described there. That work's underway. we just want to make sure, again, folks are aware that that's featured in that if you haven't sort of gotten into that level of detail. I will see if, Kelly, if there's anything you wanted to offer on that.
You did a great job, Scott. I think we elevated the ability to create a data-driven workforce ecosystem as one of our 3 systems goals. And so that is the 3rd systems goal, with key performance indicators being access to real-time data for effective decision-making and reporting. And the 2nd KPI is to provide programmatic outcomes to students and job seekers to enable them to make informed decisions on education and training. And then how we go about doing that, obviously, is a interagency process. Been working closely with Scott and with Dante and their teams on a planning grant this past year. And that planning grant will be, the foundations of that will be helping us to direct the next year's worth of work there. So a lot to do, but very much aligned with what we're doing already in P21.
Great. Thank you, Kelly Marie and Scott. Any final questions on those 4 updates before we move on to system improvements? Okay, great. So we're going to ask Scott again to give us an update on the system improvements. You might remember that we voted to approve the modernization system-wise of P20 Win in June, and the operating group and the data governing board have spent the last couple of months exploring best practices on building out the environment. I'm not going to attempt to describe what they've been doing because I'll get I'll mispronounce something, but I'm going to let Scott give us an update on the security and architecture updates because we know how important those are. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. And the importance of these is that they are a facilitator to some of the other activities we described. So we're trying to make sure that you are, we're giving an update on these, you sort of know where they stand in progress, because our ability to do things like produce the analysis for disconnected use or produce the workforce analysis is directly related to our ability to pull the data together, do that securely, provide clarity to the agencies that are involved about how that data is being used, and then move the whole request forward. So we're making, in June, this board voted to have us move forward on a modernization effort to implement essentially a cloud-based solution to try and have a little more security and ability to manage the data across agencies than we've had in the past. And so we are in the midst of implementing that, but the June meeting was an important milestone because we got folks to go from the data governing board and the executive board to review some set of options and have the board's endorsement to move forward with some of the modernization is an important milestone for us to cross to be able to make some of the system improvements that will make it easier for us to produce data in the future. So the board resolution we could recirculate if you want, but it asks us to look at a hybrid cloud-based solution. It's a hybrid because it allows agencies to participate with some flexibility. We know folks are sort of in different places. They're going to sort of take this at a different pace, and so we're not doing something where we're moving, from 0 to 100. We're allowing agencies still the discretion that they need to manage and work with their own data. So we're looking at a hybrid solution, and we've been doing sort of 3 things in parallel to make progress on that in the interim. A lot of the work that we had done to get to that point in June was through support from the Data Integration Support Center, or DISC, which is a group at WestEd that provide advice to states at no cost on data integration efforts. And so they've continued to provide technical assistance and support to us as we go through this. And we've got 3 things kind of underway that are moving us forward. One, and this is really a little bit in the weeds, but we consulted with the firm that makes the software that we use for secure file transfer to make sure that we can update and modernize the way in which you're using the secure file transfer tools so that they're sort of current, that they have the latest functionality. We got a set of design recommendations from that group. Last month, we reviewed those with the data governing board, I believe now twice, and are in the process of trying to finalize, and then we'll put in place changes to that. So that makes the file transfer that we need to move your data securely securely, safely for all these analyses. That should make that an easier, more robust process than we've had in the past. It's just something we have not sort of taken a close look at in several years. And so we worked with a consultant to get a review of that, to get, again, an independent perspective. We'll start to put some of those changes in place relatively soon once we go through the sort of last round of finalizing it. So we made changes to secure file transfer. The second thing we've done in the hybrid cloud-based solution, we looked at two different options, essentially a build option where the state develops it itself, and then a buy option where we're looking at licensing an external resource for it. So it's just a little faster to get the buy option than the build option. So we have completed a licensing arrangement with the Administrative Data Research Facility, which is a platform used by Coleridge Initiative that many agencies, I think, have either have some familiarity with because you've either sent staff to training or a webinar or some other resource that Coleridge has produced. They do work with states around the country or other jurisdictions to provide a secure computing environment or secure data enclave to work with administrative data across agencies. So we've got a 1-year pilot arrangement where we're licensing the Administrative Data Research Facility for potential use for P20 Win. Again, no one is obligated to use it, but we have the licensing that we can use it, pilot it for the next year, and test out what works or what doesn't work. And we're going through some of the details with them, how it integrates with the current legal agreements. So that's the second piece that's underway. We've got one sort of licensed secure computing environment for the next year, give or take, that agencies can avail themselves of. And then the third piece, we're working with the build option with state IT, which is BITS, the Bureau of Information Technology Solutions, working with them on an internal environment that is a little slower to get off the ground because we were short-staffed and we were trying to hire a project manager to take that on. And so when we bring on the project manager, which we should have done by the time of the next board meeting, we'll begin those activities more in earnest and start developing the requirements, testing it with the agencies, and fleshing that out in a little more detail. But that's been a little slower to get off the ground just because we are a little short-staffed and need to bring on some capacity to actually manage that project. But those three pieces, the file transfer, the sort of buy option for the secure computing environment, and the build option are all underway to varying degrees. And again, we appreciate the board's support for what we discussed in June. Then that can help us move forward and modernize and make the analyses that we're talking about previously a little easier and more secure to do. That's it.
Thank you,
that's all
Scott.
me talking, so thank you.
Any questions for Scott on the system modernization? Thank you for doing that work. All right, great. Seeing none, I think Katie or Rachel is going to give us an update on the current data requests.
Right, I think that is me. We have a number of them. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown. There's a number of them. A number of our data requests are right now in sort of the agreement phase, so they haven't yet started. We haven't started the matching and analysis phase, but we have a request around housing choice vouchers, and so that one actually is in the data sharing agreement signature process. We have data requests studying the impact of the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program. We're partnering with UMass Boston, a researcher on staff there, to think about the impact of those scholarships on recipients. And that is also in the data request and agreement phase. We're in the analysis phase of the workforce pathways request. That's combining all of the Department of Labor workforce data and thinking a little bit about workforce pathways. We mentioned earlier that the disconnected youth, the update to that report is currently in the very tail end of the data sharing agreement signature phase. We're just waiting on one or two, and then we can move to start matching and moving data. We have a request evaluating the Roca Young Mothers Program, which is based in Hartford. And so that one right now, the data sharing agreement's been amended and is currently in review at our legal. And then we have a few in development. There's one with the Sentencing Commission that involves the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and Department of Social Services. We're still working on that data request. There is a request that we've received around outcomes of the Chef versus O'Neill program. That again is still in the data request development phase. And the final one is requests around crossover youth. Those are youth who are served by the Department of Children and Families, as well as the Court Support Services Division of the Judicial Branch. And so right now, we ourselves are engaged in some analytical work related to the workforce pathways, but we've been shepherding the majority of these through the data request development process. So working with agencies to make sure the right elements are represented in the agreements, and working towards getting those agreements signed. Commissioner Bartolomeo, you have your hand up.
Thank you. What's the question looking to be answered for the housing vouchers? I'm just curious.
That is a really good question. Katie, I'm gonna punt that one to you.
So it's in a similar vein as the pre-K study in New Haven. So they want to see what the impact of the housing choice vouchers is on students in New Haven. And so they're looking specifically at those families that are on the wait list and those student outcomes.
Thank you, Rachel. Any other questions about the pending and in-process data requests of P20 WIN? It's a lot of great topics. And clearly people are accessing the resource, so that's good news. All right. I believe we are coming to the conclusion of our agenda. Bye, Michael. Thanks for joining. Any other business not on the agenda that the board would like to entertain? Elena.
Just want to say thank you for the work around the universal pre-K study in New Haven, right, with the Tobin Center. We're getting just a lot of traction around that, that study and the research. Whenever we have research that really doubles down on the importance of early childhood and the impact on families and the impact on our economy, we're so happy to see that. So thank you to the work of P20 with that, and we're looking to see how we can capitalize on that and get some more publicity and traction for that.
Elaine, is that something you could send around to this board for those of us that may have seen it and forgotten or aren't familiar?
Sure, I can definitely resend. Katie had sent it a little bit ago, and happy to do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Scott.
Just because I forgot to say this earlier, and because Commissioner Bartolomeo asked the question, it reminded me all of the work that we are doing, particularly the work on the technical infrastructure, has really relied on our colleagues at Department of Labor. So OPM is sort of doing a lot of the talking in the meeting, but we work hand in hand with the Department of Labor team on data integration, and they have put a lot of time and effort on the technical side, particularly because that's the part where they're really at the center of it. So grateful to Patrick and his colleagues there for that, but that's a lot of work that's happening kind of behind the scenes, and we're just reporting out on where it is, but do that in partnership with labor.
Appreciate acknowledging Patrick and his team. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, anything else? Great. Seeing no others, I will say thank you. It's been a pleasure to chair this group. I look forward to being in the peanut gallery at the December meeting and passing the virtual gavel over to Kelly Marie. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Moved by Kelly Marie. Tim, you want a second?
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor, please. Any discussion on adjournment? Want to debate the merits of adjourning? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. We are adjourned at 2:45. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.